Hello and welcome to Handmade Chelsea Online, an exhibitor live session. To introduce myself, my name's Alice and I'm part of the Handmade in Britain team. For this live session that you've clicked into, we're going to be talking to Ben Taggart with his title, The Art of Miniature Model Making. Now, he is a part of our Handmade Chelsea Online part of our exhibitors, or working with, I should say. And this is a virtual discussion. So we do have our chat and our question and answer box available. So if you do have a question for Ben, please do utilise the chat. And then I will stop at appropriate times and ask Ben your burning questions. So apart from that, we've got Ben in his studio. So I'm going to hand over now. So first of all, welcome, Ben. And welcome to your live session. It's over to you.
Well, thanks for having me in this live session. This is my studio. I work from my home in South London, and it's been incredibly convenient during lockdown to be working from home. And in lots of ways, it hasn't made too much of a difference to my sort of general routine. Today, I would like to show you my architectural house portrait models. I've been working as an architectural model maker for over 25 years, and I started in the film business, making models for film and television, and in the 1990s I got made redundant, as so many people did, and I struck out on my own and started my own company making models of people's houses. I tend to work on older properties, although I have made models of modern houses, but the majority of the models that I make are listed buildings or older buildings, Victorian houses, Edwardian, Georgian houses. And what I love is to put in a feeling of weathering and texturing and making the house feel full of its real character. It's a real combination of the sort of engineering side of architectural model making and getting the details very, very accurate, and then a more painterly approach where I try and get the feeling of texture and weathering in the final finishing and the painting of the work. I'd like to start by showing you this model here, which is actually a model of a house that's literally down the road from my studio. This client had lived in the house for many years, and he wanted a model just because he loved the look of the house, the architectural details, the brickwork, and every single brick on the front of the house is reproduced in the model. The models are so accurate that one of the methods I use to survey the building is to actually count the bricks. So if there are 24 bricks in the height of the first floor, there will be 24 bricks on my model. So it's that accurate. And the first thing I do in order to create a model of your house is that I would usually do a measured survey. Now, this has been a lot harder because of lockdown, and at present I'm not actually doing measured surveys, obviously because of the lockdown restrictions, and I'm asking clients to take a lot of photographs of their houses for me, which is working, but if any would like to look down at the sketchbook I've got here, this is the sort of notes that I need to produce a model on a normal basis. Obviously with lockdown it's a little bit more difficult. And you can see that usually what I would do is I would literally measure every window, every architectural feature, and try to get everything as accurate as possible. So the models are completely unique. They're made up of absolutely unique parts. It's not like I go to a doll's house shop and buy a door. Every single part is made individually for each model. Once I've got my measurements sorted out or using photographs that my clients have sent me to gauge the proportions of the house, I will start by producing a survey plan, which I've got an example of one here. These are all drawn on the computer, and don't be fooled that there isn't a handmade element to that, because in drawing something on the computer, although I'm drawing with an automated tool, every single line that I'm drawing is drawn by hand on my computer. So these are very time consuming to produce, but once I've got all of the architectural features, I can use this to almost produce my own kit. Another technique that I use in production is laser cutting. Again, a very modern technique, but very, very useful. So the first thing I'll do is to start by producing the facade of the building in wood, and I will cut all of the windows out using a laser. So this is very, very accurate. Everything can be beautifully straight lines and beautifully cut. You can see the laser leaves a little bit of burnt, charred surface to it. All that has to be sanded off and sealed so that the burning doesn't come through. But those are the basic structure of the walls. Making the architectural details of the building, one of the techniques I use a lot is photo etching. Again, this is an automated technique, but it's very, very, very useful indeed. So for producing things like sash windows, here's an example of one that's painted up and finished. I draw up all of the windows, and then I use this photo etching technique where acid is applied to the surface of the brass, and then the brass is burnt through. So everything that is black line, for instance, here on these window frames, can end up being solid brass. And this is incredibly useful technique, and the accuracy of it is absolutely amazing. We're literally talking down to a 1/10 of a millimeter accuracy. So I've got to show you this as one of my favorite little things. This is a little tiny Lutchins bench. I hope you can see that. And that is at a scale of 1 to 100. So it's amazing the accuracy that you can get with this process. I usually build my models at a scale of 1 to 50, so that's double that size. And it means that all of the details, for instance, the lead work that you can see on the front door there can be replicated, and every single brick can be individually pointed out. So that's one of the techniques I use. Another technique that I use is sometimes, quite often, especially in Georgian buildings and Victorian buildings, there's a lot of duplication. For instance, I might have to make a colonnade and have several columns that are identical. So the way that I do that is that I might produce a single column and then use a rubber mold. Here is a column that I made for a museum. I work a lot with museums, and this was for the Roman baths in the city of Bath. I have a model which is, as you come into the main entrance of the Bath Museum, you will see my models sitting there. For that, I needed hundreds of columns, and so I produced several masters, which I made on a lathe by hand, and then I made rubber molds. This is a rubber mold here, and then into the rubber mold you pour a resin, and that will harden very quickly, and you can produce multiple duplicates. So here are some rather more complicated columns. This is the master, and this is the duplicate. And again, to produce the master, I've used brass etching to create this wonderful technique of the fluted columns and all of the acanthus leaves on the capital and all of those details. So I use lots of different and complex techniques to produce my models. The final result is really a range of portrait models, and they sort of fall into different categories. I have the private terraced house, the semi-detached house, and one of the other elements that I've introduced into my work is house history. I'm very keen on architectural history and social history, and I actually work with a friend of mine who is an archivist and a house historian. And he and I produce this sort of hybrid of a model and a house history together. So he will write the text and I will produce the model, and I will do all the graphic design and incorporate the model and the text together in a frame. So we write a very short history about the house. We talk about the architectural detail. We talk about who lived in the house, whether there were servants, whether there were you know, what jobs people had who lived in the houses. And often owners ask me to put very specific details in, and you can see in the window of this, there are a couple of cats just looking out of the window. It's extraordinary how often I'm asked to produce pets looking out of the windows in my models. I've done all sorts of projects like that, and here are a couple of tiny dogs that that were added to a model which went to Canada a few weeks ago. So the beauty of doing this is that I can work on projects all around the world. I don't necessarily have to visit the house, although if I can visit the house, I feel that it helps on a lot of levels, not only gaining an insight into the structure of the building, but also getting an insight into my clients and why they're looking for a model and what specific purpose they have for the model. The frames for the model are all hand built. And of course, you can have the frame any size you like. So I often talk to clients about where they're intending to hang the picture once it's finished and what size they would like the finished object to be. So the frame size can be variant according to what people like. Now, I'm not quite sure how we're doing for time, Alice, but I said that I would try, if I could, to demonstrate a few of my techniques.
You're all right there. We've got you're 10 minutes in, so we've just got over 5 minutes with a couple of minutes left for questions, which I can tell you are building up. So
okay.
So really looking forward to your demonstration.
Right. Well, very, very quickly, I just wanted to show you one of the techniques that I employ is basically all of the models are painted with high quality acrylic paints. And I just wanted to show you this very, very quick, but just to show you, this is a section of brickwork that I prepared earlier. And one of the things that is so exciting is the final stages. After you layer up all the architectural detail and you layer up all the window frames and everything else, the final stage is like it's sort of the jeopardy rises as this goes on. The final stage is always the painting, and it's always the most stressful stage. So one of the things that I do at the very end of building a model is to apply washes of paint. And I can show you here, just putting washes into the brickwork texture that I use. This is going to be a little hit and miss because let me just take a bit out there. You can see what happens when you add a little wash of lighter paint into the brickwork areas. You produce all the mortar lines, and hopefully this will settle down a bit. As I say, I'm usually doing this in a very, very considered and controlled way. So to do it very quickly on camera is a little bit hair-raising, but we're getting there. So what we can do is make the mortar lines all stand out. And then what I would also do probably is add a little darker paint just under the window sills where you get weathering, and you get a little darker brickwork happening. And so that in places also adds a little bit more realism to the brick texture. The full effect isn't really realized until the whole thing dries, but I'm hoping that the resolution of the camera is good enough that you can see the basic idea. I think what might be nice is if you zoomed in on one more model, if we've got time. This is a model of a bookshop that I created during the first phase of lockdown. And I actually had a wonderful client who owns a shop just off the Fulham Road. It's called Papers and Paints, and he is a paint and paint analysis specialist, and he has this shop just off the Fulham Road. I made a model for him, and he very kindly let me use the structure of all the work that I did to produce my own example model. So this is a duplicate, really, for my own, just to show people how I make my models and the sort of detail that I can put in. But rather than reproducing his paint shop, I decided to create a fictional bookshop. And so I decided to do that, and even make hundreds of tiny, tiny books in the window display. But you can see, if you pull back a little bit, you can see the brick texture above and all of the different colours of the brick. And on this, what I quite like is all of that feeling of detritus that you get, that sort of London feeling of, you know, burglar alarms and cable television cables and drain pipes and all of those sort of things. A lot of my clients ask me to remove all that sort of stuff when I do a portrait model of their house, which is absolutely fine. And I do see that you don't want a lot of, you know, satellite dishes cluttering up the place. But I quite like it in a way. I think it's part of the urban texture, and it's part of what gives the house its character. So I really enjoy putting all those miniature details on. I feel it's sort of, you know, it's the face of the building that you know. If you've got any questions, Alice, I think maybe I can answer questions.
We do. We
yeah.
have quite a lot of questions. Now, one of the questions that have come in, so we can see the facade, but have you ever built a whole house back, front and sides?
Yes, I've built many of those. In fact, before I started putting the models in box frames, I worked regularly just building the whole house for people, making what I call a tabletop model. One of the difficulties with those is really that a lot of clients don't have the space to house it. It's all right if you've got a nice deep shelf, you can put one on, but often I find that there's that my clients don't have the room really to have a tabletop model. I do a lot of work for museums, and I produce tabletop models for them, and they're obviously they have a lot more space, and one of the other things to bear in mind is with a tabletop model you need a dust cover or something to stop it getting damaged. So I can supply perspex boxes, clear perspex cases for the models to be covered in. But I find that the framed models are a lot easier because you just put a hook up and hang it on the wall, and there's no preparation required, and so they are much more popular, I find.
So I can see that over on our Handmade Chelsea online, you've got Unlock the Secrets of Your House, you know, a model including a house history, which you touched upon earlier. But have any of the histories turned up anything, you know, rather interesting or gruesome?
Sadly, nothing gruesome. Actually, I'm not sure that it is sad, because I think if you were my customer and I came to you and said, look, I'm terribly sorry, but I found out that there was a prolific murderer living in your house in the 1890s, you might be a bit unnerved. So in a way, it's quite good that I've not found out anything gruesome. I have found out some rather lovely and interesting and touching things about the people who lived in the houses that myself and my colleague Paul have researched. And we found all sorts of amazing things. We did a house recently down near Sevenoaks, and we found that the owner's son went off to fight in the First World War. He came back on leave, and on his death certificate, it said that he died from a gardening injury, and he got sepsis from cutting his finger pruning the roses. And I just think it's the tragedy of it, that a man can survive the trenches in the Western Front and end up being felled by a rose is rather a sad story. So I found out some amazing things, and it's always interesting learning about the occupants of houses and also about the sort of arrangement of houses, how the house was used when it was originally built, the use of the parlour, the kitchen, the scullery. And in modern buildings, most of these have been sort of rearranged and transferred into other locations. So I can give you an insight into your house that you might never have thought existed.
Oh, well, I'll certainly look forward to that. Oh, I live in a Georgian house. I don't know what happened to that one. Oh. So I can see we literally are running out of time just before our next one. But just to end, we can see you've got your models in front, and you've got 5 models available with lots of information more about how you discover the background, a little video of how you put them together. But just finally, just run through, do you have the price range there, you know, of, and how long do those pieces take? We've just got about 3 minutes left now.
Yeah, well, the prices start at £16.50 for the model, including the box frame, and the range of prices that I've got on my website also include the VAT, and so those are on the Handmade site. I think with the pricing, it's important to say that each one of these is an individual product, and they are priced on an individual basis. So it's not really to do with the size of the building, it's more to do with the amount of architectural detail in the building. Some buildings that are very large can be quite simple, and you know, so with every single commission, I'd like the owner to get in touch with me. We can talk on the phone, or we can communicate by email or even Zoom. And I can find out as much information from them about how they want to have the project working. And from that, we can talk about the pricing as well. The starting price is really as an indication of what it's likely to cost. They are incredibly time consuming. They take weeks to produce, and the materials that I use are highly specialized and also rather expensive. So I do make every effort to make them as affordable as I can, but obviously there's a huge amount of work in each project. So that's
well, we're really pleased to have them on board, certainly here for Handmade Chelsea Online. And if you do have any questions, you know, now for Ben, I've actually put his link immediately to his page on our website. You can find that over in our chat box. And over the next couple of days, Ben might be able to go on to our live chat function. So do also utilize that to go in and ask him some questions. And next time he's online, he can answer them, because I do know we've still got a few more questions coming in. So I'm going to say thank you very much, Ben. It's been a pleasure to go walk around your studio. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for your camera woman there. Done a great job, a great pairing there.
Thank you, Annie, for doing the camera work.
I have to say thank you very much. And I'm afraid we just need to leave it there. So thank you very much for everyone who's attended.